It's the Lekker Rugby Pod, only on Megaphone Rugby.
Welcome to episode 56, part 1. And this is the first of the two-part series. Harry and I are going to be trying something different today. So firstly, Harry, I'm very glad to see you're alive and kicking. And we're able to talk to me tonight. Yeah, I had a rough couple of days. So welcome back.
I got the most amazing ab workout for 48 hours. I'm still recovering. Just sitting up now makes me make all bad noises like you're a prop being squeezed by ox. But no, I'm happy to wake up into a brand new world of rugby.
Yes, yeah.
The thing about rugby now is you have to think about everything. There's not one competition, there's not one town, there's not one country that you might not have some interest in. And this is the cool thing about rugby. It's not dominated by one league or one cup.
That's the thing now. It's now become a global chessboard. So what happens in France has an effect on what's happening in South Africa. And what's happening in England, for example, like Leicester Tigers not holding on to Handré Pollard, has a pronounced effect of what's happening in South Africa. Handré Pollard signed for the Bulls. So we confirmed it now. It's true. It's coming. He's coming. Not officially yet, but we know it's happening. So for me, I heard about it this morning at Loftus. Very on the sly kind of remark, and then it was confirmed later. What did you think about hearing that news when you heard it? What did you think?
Well, it's a good fit, and it's topical because of the derby coming up this weekend. And we like to create and train and fashion and design number 10s for you, and then you have fun with them. The valleys of Paarl, areas of Stellenbosch, all across the southern suburbs of Cape Peninsula. We just make them for you, and then they go out. But it's a good choice for Pollard, because who'd want to play in the Goof Troop right now at number 10? I mean, it's not designed for Pollard's style. I drew a pencil around Pollard's, what I call the 9 lives of World Cup knockout king, Handré Pollard. And since the Bulls need that, they need to get over the hump, they need to get a knockout final championship win. You got to look no further than the guy who knows how to do that. And what's very interesting, so I looked at all 9 matches. He lost one when he was 20 years old to Dan Carter's All Blacks, sometimes called the best All Blacks team ever. And he was playing for Heineken Meyer. More on that later. But the Boks developed a style that the All Blacks had a hard time playing against. And Pollard was one of the keys to that. Being that young, I mean, just imagine someone right now who's 20 and how many times we say, no, he's not ready. Pollard was in the fire. But you look across his stats, and interestingly enough, he almost always plays big minutes. He carries a lot more. And what really amazed me is how he busted 12 tackles, 5 line breaks in his body of work as a knockout king. It's not just making kicks at the end. He is a threat to run across over your 10 and maybe into your 12. Yes, he made all those kicks, but he also made 269 meters in the carry. There's no other 10, you can check it, over that many games, and not that many people had that many games. So let's make it 5 games or more. Knockout games, no one comes close.
So you're talking about knockout games here. These stats are for knockout games.
Just the 9 lives of Handré Pollard. I'm just saying he's a knockout guy. I'm not saying he's your guy on game 3, round 4, in the middle of French winter against Poe. He doesn't care. He cares more, and he performs better on the big stage, which is what the Bulls are lacking right now. They're doing really well against the little minnows. They're smashing them. Then they come against a difficult team, and you need someone who will make the Bulls play where they're supposed to. His pass-to-run ratio is actually a really different breed. In his 9 matches, 87 passes, 50 runs. No one else even comes close to that. They're always kicking more or passing more, but not running. And he only conceded 1 penalty in 9 knockouts. He only got turned over 1 time in all those minutes. And only 1 loss, as I said. So Pollard is the real deal. He cannot be judged on a different standard than what he is, which is the knockout king. He's a field general. He's not trying to do behind the back passes, but he's not going to get turned over. He's not trying to do no-look cross kicks. But usually his kicks go somewhere that are awkward for the other team. He finds the coffin corner. I think it's brilliant. At 15 million a year, I think is the story. He had bigger offers. So as a Bulls supporter, you can be happy that he turned down bigger money to come to the Bulls. That says something. It could be social. It could be that he has, I think he has significant sponsor money that is also piled on top of that, his image rights. and he's only 30 years old, which is surprising sometimes because he feels like he's been there forever, but he's significantly younger than Damon Dialende, for example. So you could see him playing in South Africa. I was more of a fan of him going to Japan and joining that brigade of 9 established Boks because they seem to get hurt less. They have a less forever season. It's out of the limelight. If he has a dip in form, no one knows. And, you know, like if you play in South Africa, the spotlight's on you. So let's say he misses a kick in the final of the ERC. And suddenly people are going to go, throw him out.
Heaven forbid.
Yeah. So, but it's good news for the Bulls. And, you know, I like this partnership, this collaboration we have. You know, we birth them, we feed them, we teach them all their guts and instinct, all the gees, we imbue them with that. And then you take them. And then you win.
No.
And Jake White is losing his excuses, MVA. He's been saying for a long time. But look at this team and that team. I mean, you wake up with a team that has Willie LaRue and Handré Pollard. I know they're older, but game managers that know how to win. You get Elrich back. That pack is still one of the best in the ERC, right there behind Leinster. Yeah, I think it's a brilliant move for both. But what do you hear? What's the scuttlebutt? What's the rumor mills about how this all came off?
From what I hear, I'm sorry, Bulls, don't slaughter me now. Don't kill me. I'm just a messenger. The Bulls management is not entirely happy about this. Jake not entirely happy about this. But it came from the very, very top. And the check also came from the very, very top. Said, we need a fly off, and I'm going to buy you a fly off. And he went and he bought the fly off.
But that's indisputable that you needed a fly off.
Like, no, I know.
But they said they wanted someone else, a different style.
I'm not sure what the money situation is in terms of is it coming out of the budget? Is it coming outside of the budget? What's the Chinese accounting going to be? You know, how are you going to hide it away? You know, how's it going to work?
I feel you. Yeah,
that's what. I said to you, our friend Hugh Griffin, it's going to be probably Handré Pollard next year and 14 of his Pretoria Boys High School because they can't afford anybody else. Hopefully not. But I mean, that same you sent me a WhatsApp and he said, listen, look at this backline. Papier, Pollard, de Serfontein and Kriel, or Kriel and Serfontein, KLA, Sepp de Klerk and Moody, and then maybe Devin or Willie at the back.
What a nice
world-class backline.
What a nice run that would have been. We shouldn't do would have been, but would have been if you had Serfontein from the beginning of his career through.
Yeah, we should have stayed here as well.
And if Pollard had stayed and not gone to the French team and got injured because they always push you back too quickly. Yeah, but we can also do that on like, what if Rassi got the job instead of Alistair? So, you know, let's move on.
I think there's something that we mustn't underestimate in terms of the players coming back to Africa. Family pressure. Having a wife in a foreign country, just had a baby, no support structure, no matter how much money you've got in the bank. Ake van der Merwe said the same thing. I wanted to come home to be close to my family. And I think that's going to, as these players get older and the families get bigger, it's going to become a bigger thing. And we might see more of these players returning to South Africa, even if it's a year or two, a glory year or two maybe. I think the thing with Pollard is they're going to wrap him in cotton wool. They're going to not play him that much. You're going to have Buta and Keegan Johannes, who I spoke to this morning. He's very excited about playing 10. He says he prefers playing 10, even though he's signed as a 9. So I think that's probably going to see a couple of younger flyers being developed next to Handré and then coming through. But anyway, enough about those comings. The big coming last week. I mean, yesterday morning I was sitting, I have a meeting lined up with Tinus van Staden, the sports editor of Rapport, the biggest Afrikaans newspaper in the country. And I thought about what I'm going to talk about. And he asked to postpone the meeting for 1 hour. And in that 1 hour, the news breaks about Felix Jones. And I thought, gee whiz, what a gift from the gods here. That was an unexpected one. Rapport didn't see it coming. Our friend Hendrik Onheer didn't see it coming. And if he doesn't know, I mean, that's a state secret even. So what's your thoughts on that one, a bombshell?
I'm not even sure that it is real until Hendrik confirms it. So let's wait.
True.
Good interview of you by Tinus. By the man, that man has some piercing eyes. You know, he could be a good interrogator. Just look at someone and don't respond.
Yeah, sure.
Felix Jones has a master's degree in psychology. I texted you. I don't have it handy. The kind of messaging he was able to give down the stretch in World Cup, cryptic, clear, punchy, laced with venom, hitting young men right where they need to be hit at that moment, quantifying it. I don't know if you've ever been in the gym with an evil trainer and they try to make you bench 25 times. They tell you it's 25 times, but right when you're at 24, they say 5 more. It's that old trainer trick. So Felix was very good at knowing who his guys were. He's highly intelligent. He played the game maximizing his less than stellar athletic gifts, but his world-class IQ about rugby. As a player, he was that way. So the other thing is there's 3 themes that I want to talk about with Felix because it's worth that much. It's important. Felix goes to England, doesn't fit into the Borthwick camp. Borthwick is a really stripped down, old school coach. He's younger than Rusty, but he's like an old fogey. He believes what he believes. He has his doctrines. He never understood the blitz hammer. What he calls the blitz isn't even a blitz because everyone stays connected on a high rush line. That's not a blitz. You have to have a separation. Peter Steph Toy, Jesse Creel. You have to come out of your line and hammer somebody. It's a direction diversion defense that Felix and Jacques Nienaber have worked with, which is I'm like a sheepdog. I'm gonna make the other team run into the kraal, and then I'm gonna slaughter you. So there's lots of missed tackles. It's okay. Sometimes you get them wrong and you go too high. Felix worked on that so well that when Jacques went to Leinster, Felix could take that system and embed it into England, and England was getting there and would have been in a much better place if they persisted with it. But here's where we learn about Rossi and how he's a likable guy behind the scenes. No matter what his, for all the things he has that it's a little bit difficult sometimes, he's likable. Assistant coaches don't have to come back to you. It's murder. It's hell to work for a bad boss coach. It's horrible. It's one of the worst things because they have you till midnight. They have you till 2. You can go no excuse to your wife. You got to go. And so it's miserable if you're on the outs or if you're ostracized. You could tell from Chasing the Sun too how incredibly integral Felix was. He was the guy I thought that could have the most different view and it was okay. And sometimes that happens, sort of the outs, the external validation. Yeah, it's from Ireland. So, let him go a little crazy. And so I think it's important, and what Rossi has learned is he likes those voices, whether it's Tony Brown from New Zealand, Jerry Flannery or Felix from Ireland. Interesting point, Felix and Jerry overlapped at Munster for about 3 or 4 seasons. I mean, as a hooker and then a backline player. And Felix had very bad injury that, truncated his career. Jerry was more the indestructible guy. They're also very different cats, but they like each other. I checked on that. So we're not looking at a instant court intrigue where the guy's behind the throne and I'm going to vie for a succession plan with knife in the back. Felix absolutely would think of Jerry Flannery as someone he respects, that he would tip the hat to and defer to in some ways. Whereas Jerry Flannery knows that Felix is a smart boy. And on the area of coaching, he's probably ahead of him. And here's the other thing. It naturally divides. So people are going to say, why do you need so many assistant coaches? How is it possible that you need so many? Well, nobody quibbles with having a scrum coach. And we only have 5, 6, 7, maybe 10 scrums in a match. We have to have a scrum coach because it's so different from all the other skills. And if you have a bad weak scrum, then you don't win the World Cup because then the All Blacks push you off your ball. At minute 79, they kick a kick, they make the kick and they win. So you cannot go into a test environment with a weak scrum. The scrum is so complicated and it's so ever-changing and you have different refs, so you have to have a scrum coach. The scrum coach is immensely popular. So now you go across to the other, set piece. Do we have a dedicated line-out coach? Not really. We kind of put that into forwards. And then do we have a breakdown coach? And the answer here is when Heineke Meyer was coach, he did something quite revolutionary. We kind of think of Meyer as stuck in the mud as well, like a Borthwick. But he actually hired Richie Gray, not the 6'9" lock that plays for Scotland, but a hard man with incredible intellect who is a coach of the breakdown. He is by far the best breakdown coach in the world. If you just want to know about every single thing about the breakdown, he developed the rules for World Rugby, for example. He actually coaches right now for Toulon. Guess what his name is? His title is Collision Coach. It's not even just breakdown, it's just every collision. Does anybody remember Toulon recently and just coming and beating us up? We We don't get beat up in our own patch. So there's something very bullying about him. And Heineke Meyer noticed it on that Scottish tour of South Africa where the Springboks were vastly superior team. But every game came down to the crunch because they ruled the breakdown. The Scottish did. I forgot the guy's name. Kind of guy looks like me. Bald head, beard, Alistair, I think was his first name. And Heineke said, wow, we may not be as good as the All Blacks in 2015 for our semi-final. But whenever we meet them, we could beat them because rugby affords you the ability to beat a better team, a team with more superstars, more speed, more brilliance, more trickery. But if I can win the breakdown, which happens 220 to 250 times a game, compared to your 5 scrums and your 25 lineouts, and not all those breakdowns are highly contested. So let's say it's 75 crucial breakdowns. If I can just get 5 of those from you, maybe 8, it changes everything because now you don't want to go deep in the phases because you keep waiting for the turnover. And winning the collision, Richie Gray, I've seen him coach in Texas for an American football team. He actually came over and started doing college and universities teaching contact, how to end up on the right side of any collision. Judo, karate, Krav Maga, it didn't matter. He just studies the ability to grapple and fight in the street, basically. And then his teams are good street fighters. He invented the tush push for the NFL. And this is where the NFL has recently brought in sort of a proto-maul drive, which works very well. He is the author of that. He's worked with other sports. He's a guy that just thinks about 2 bodies, 3 bodies, and 4 bodies in motion clashing. So he made Damien Delende the top turnover back in the 2015 World Cup. Richie Gray, when he was breakdown coach of the Boks, made the Boks they got the most turnovers. That was during Pocock's era. They had the most turnovers in the World Cup. It wasn't just Flo, who already knew. So Felix Jones, if he becomes the breakdown coach, or if Jerry Flannery slides over and becomes a great breakdown coach, not exclusively, but if they operate in those portfolios where they say, we're defensive-minded, but on defensive rucks, we're going to turn over to the ruck master, or we're going to go to the breakdown guy. That appears to be what Felix Jones might be slotted for. And that is a good move, because I've actually watched across rugby who has given a coach the duty of breakdown coach. And the ones that do, and the French teams have the money to do it, it really makes a difference. You go into those games and no ball is safe. So I think it's tremendous. I think it's probably the best news for Boks in the year so far. It's new, it's young, but Felix is definitely someone that all the players really love. And Jerry Flannery is still new in it, so we don't know how that's going to slot out. We don't know if Jacques going to be doing the same thing. But Rassi was very cheeky. My friend Charlie Morgan from The Telegraph pointed out this delicious paragraph by Rassi, where he just said, basically, that was my Trojan horse, thanks.
Yeah. We asked the same question as Jacques Nienaber, but another Trojan horse over at Leinster. And the problem is that Trojan horse is teaching the Leinster and Irish guys by extension how to tackle, how to do the blitz defense and how to do it properly. So, maybe that's going to backfire. But the other side of the Felix Jones being appointed issue is not so much what he's going to do and where he's going to fit in terms of his ability and where he's going to be utilized, but in terms of where does he fit in the hierarchy. And somebody made a very astute observation on our channel that said, listen, but Tony earned the right to sit next to Rassi in the coaching box. Is he still going to be able to sit there?
I don't think, that was a good comment. Well drafted, well thought out. I don't think Rassi stands on ceremonies. I think he allows you to leapfrog. He's very meritocracy based. He's not so title based. And Rassi just in general is that guy. He was too young to do a lot of the things he did when he was coming up, and so he likes that young gun. He likes a bit of a character. And I think Tony is very self-possessed. He has what Theodore Roosevelt called self-mastery. I think he has control of his own emotions. So he's not going to be miffed or put out the way some people would. As long as he is the guy who designs phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 starter plays, and then does the reshape or the kick return, I don't think he cares whether in the middle of a game, when you need a moment of sheer brilliance, maybe something out of the blue. That's Felix time.
Mm.
Tony's more of a thought planner. You could imagine him having a really long list of play 1 ABC, 2 ABC, and working on those sort of to the end and ad infinitum. Felix is a bit different. Felix, you can see him down the stretch in the World Cup, he and Rossi getting together, fighting a bit, but in a good way, like brothers, and disagreeing. And I think you need someone like that when you have someone of the stature, the honorary doctorate, the guy flying in on the helicopter, Rossi the book, Rossi the producer. I mean, he's larger than life. So who's going to speak to the king and tell him the king is wrong?
Emperor's naked.
Hey, Felix he's a guy from Dublin, actually, from a good school, but he spent a lot of time in Munster. Maybe he picked up that Peter O'Mahony trait of just saying exactly what's on your mind.
On the Peter O'Mahony subject, that's going to be in part 2 of this episode 56, which we'll publish separately, but we'll publish at the same time. We're going to talk about the goings, and he's one of them. So just one more question about Felix Jones in the future. There's a question arising now. Is Rossi going to be able to pull off the feat of allowing, getting SA Rugby to appoint a foreigner as a head coach in future? If Rossi decides he's had enough after 3 World Cups in a row, do you think Felix Jones might be the first non-South African head coach of the Springboks?
No, I don't think so. I think there's something quite particular about being the Springbok coach that requires you to know too many unspoken rules, unwritten edicts. You've got to be a politician. You've got to have the patience of Job. You have to, yeah, it's different. And I think there's things that would be bewildering through no fault of Felix's own. He just wouldn't know that he'd stepped in something with the wrong word here or the wrong phrase there or whatever. Sacred cows. So I don't think that's wise. And if I was his friend, I would tell him not to do it. There are other teams that you could do it and it wouldn't matter as much. You know, Australia, doesn't really matter where you're from. But, yeah, I don't think South Africa is that place.
The reason why he went overseas or left the Springboks is because of family. He wanted to be closer to family. He wanted to be in the Northern Hemisphere. Why do you think that's now changed? I mean, has he seen what it can be like? I mean, I wanted to ask you in the same breath, what did Steve Borthwick do? How did he screw this up so spectacularly? I mean,
yeah. So what was the famous comment that said Steve Borthwick is just a tall Eddie Jones? He's
about the personality.
In public, he's like, we're on a journey, where everyone's walking on a journey. And he sounds like kind of a cool guy that way. But apparently he's just a 24-hour coach. And it's never good enough. And someone's got to be to blame for everything behind the scenes. And unfortunately, if you're that guy, we've all been through there when we were 25 working in business and there was some 50-year-old guy and we were the set-up scapegoat, patsy. It's not so fun when you're a guy like Felix Jones, who did win a World Cup, who feels like he's just as smart as Steve Borthwick. And maybe he couldn't ever get Borthwick to buy into the defense. I think the main point was doctrinal. He couldn't ever get Steve to understand the hammer, the rush umbrella, the inverted nature, because the splits developed. You know, everyone saw the Nienaber blitz, and so they adjusted. And so you had to keep tweaking it. That's why you sent Jesse instead of Peter Steff, or you use Faf de Klerk in a different way than you would use someone like Eldrick Lowe. So, you know, I think the other part is we get bored, you know. Felix he might have done all that stuff and goes, oh, yeah, that's not that great. I liked being in a crowd of 50,000 people. I liked the adrenaline of it. And that's fine, you know, fair play. When he's 60 years old, he can sit down and talk about other stuff, you know, in the farm in Limerick somewhere. But for now, he might have been thinking, I'm missing some of my best years to really go. And what if he was able to go back to back and be seen as one of the instrumental parts? Then he can tell his wife and his family, I've written our ticket. You know, we can go anywhere now. I've got the credentials. He has the credentials already, but then he would really have it.
Okay, right. So that's a Springbok coaching. The other comings, Wales. Big question marks about Wales. Matt Sherritt had a good game. Wales, you know, almost pulled off a blinder. came up against, a bit short against a very good Ireland. And then the question started being asked about Simon Easterby, who's now the interim coach for Ireland, maybe ending up at Wales because he played in Wales for a long time. But that's not going to happen. What you've heard some very strong, let's call it that, rumors. What's going to happen to Wales? What's the story?
These jobs where, let's say, the 8 teams that have traditionally made the quarterfinals, these jobs, there's not that many open. So as a coach, you have to really do some homework. You kind of like going to a team that isn't very good and isn't playing very well because you always get a longer honeymoon. Mm-hmm. Who would want to take over the All Blacks or the Springboks? Who wants to be the next coach there? Jeez, it's horrible. Look at Razor, who's got, doing okay, and it's like the world was caving in a year ago. So whoever takes over there. But the Wales job is therefore it's wanted, it's cherished because Wales is not going to be that bad for so long. You could even see in 1 week or 2 weeks that if you give people some kind of plan, it turns around. Michael Cheika is a bit like Pollard in some ways, in that he's not everyone's taste for a 5-year club run. But geez, if you want to win in a tournament when you don't have the best players, Cheika's not a bad pick. He took the Wallabies to the final in 2015 when they weren't the top 2 team. He got Argentina, which was a 25% winning team, up to 60%, and then left them better than he found them. But he learned, and he told me this, he learned to leave at the right time. Stayed too long the first time in Wallabies. Now he goes to Argentina. He won a championship with Leinster, championship with Waratahs in Super Rugby, and always gets his team into the quarterfinals. But also he got Argentina, which had no business getting into the Final Four. They win the Final Four. So Wales is looking at Cheika, who also did the whole, I want to go back to my family in Australia. But let's just put that to the side because people just got to say that. He's got the inside track over Easterby. He's got the inside track because he's done the thing that Wales would think was successful, which is get into the quarterfinal and maybe semifinal. That would be incredible. That would put Wales right back in the conversation as one of the proud old rugby nations in the Australian World Cup. Easterby is still proving himself, and they haven't run into headwinds yet. It's sort of, the Six Nations is not as strong as it might have been recently. So until we see what happens against the French, which is coming up, I mean, you can imagine that if he gets found out, and the story is that he gets found out, then Easterby's stocks will go into the cellar really quickly. It's like playing golf with your friends. You get a new driver, and you smack that thing. It's, 300 right down the middle. That's the time to sell the driver. So, by the end of the day, you've sprayed it into the trees, you've hit a crocodile, and then people don't want it. So this is the difference of the tides. You're a board. I'm going to hire a coach. Wales is sort of conservative. They kept going with Gatlin, even though he was done. So you could see that Cheika would have the better name brand there. That whole carousel is very interesting because Graham Roundtree gave notice early in the season at Munster. So then that clears the way for him to go to Leicester Tigers, where he was revered as a player. That was always the fix. That allows Cheika to start doing his thing. He met with RFU in London. He met with Australia, and he met with Cardiff. So he's got irons in the fire. And then that allows the other shuffle to happen into Munster, which we just learned, which is Clayton McMillan. You'd like Clayton McMillan. Clayton McMillan is a former policeman, and he has a lot of what we call chias, so they call mana in New Zealand. This indefinable passion, hard to beat. He's got the Chiefs into 3 of the last 4 grand finals in Super Rugby. So hasn't won the big one yet, but he shows that sort of ability in Hamilton, which is not Auckland or Christchurch. He shows the ability to get his players to play above their head. All his teams are really hard. He talks a lot about how Super Rugby is now almost worthless and botched because the South African teams left. He's been very outspoken about that. He wants to play tough rugby. And he said, we lost a lot when we lost South African teams. We'll never really recover because everyone plays too much the same between Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific Islands. And he said, Australian teams haven't even realized that because for them, it's just, oh, this is great. It's better, But New Zealand teams, he said, really do know that from day one is we're going to struggle in World Cups. We're going to struggle going forward because we don't know how to play 16 tough forwards in a match, 10, 12, just the hard nuts African players coming off bomb squads and stuff. So, yeah, Clayton McMillan he's a good choice for Munster. Munster's really poised, again, in the Urk. You put that guy in there and you see how much a coach makes a difference. So even if Jake White's got maybe one of the best 10s in the world, now Munster's got one of the best coaches in the world. So it always just keeps moving. And fascinating that the jumps go all the way from Hamilton, New Zealand to Limerick, Ireland. And, you have to watch the board. It's like playing Risk.
Yeah, I said chessboard right at the beginning. A global chessboard now.
Yeah.
If this guy moves here, this opens up there, and this, so I love it. That's the kind of the side of rugby that I understand better than almost the technical side. That's your Andre's purview, where I just sit back and listen. Anyway, so those are not the only coaching positions open at the moment. So what's the news about Australia?
Yeah, Australia's got this thing, which is they tend to learn the wrong lesson from the last war. So they took from Eddie Jones a thing that is true, but it's not the reason. It's obtuse. They say, oh, that retread didn't work, so we shouldn't do Cheika. Because Cheika, I think, would take that job. But it's been positioned for someone who coaches in Super Rugby now. That's not the reason why Eddie Jones failed. Eddie Jones didn't fail because he had been to the final of the World Cup, and so you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't hire that guy. Eddie Jones failed because he had stopped learning about rugby. His ideas are obsolete. He had developed a bit of a my way or the highway. He loved to hear himself talk. He didn't get enough rugby assistants around him. It was all league guys and AFL and exotic tennis coaches, whatever. So no one could stand up to him. And he didn't know why he lost, famously citing, the loosehead Frans Malherbe, instead of knowing that he's a tight head in his book, which went through many edit checks. So he doesn't know why scrums are important in rugby. Cheika does. Cheika was good at every stage, but he kept getting better. And you can see that very recently. He went to Leicester and he improved the team, even though he lost Jasper Wiese, who was the best player on the team. He was the most reliable carrier, Premiership Player of the Year, Premiership Team of the Year, beloved. Jasper Wiese was a top club player because he never gets injured and he just runs through walls. And Cheika turned them around from being, 10th or whatever, 9th to 4th and in line for playoffs. So you can see recently that he's doing it. It's not just 4 years ago or 6 years ago. But Australia is looking now at Les Kiss for the Queensland Reds, Dan McKellar, who was the Tigers coach at Waratahs, and then Steve Larkham, Bernie, all South Africans will remember that guy, at Canberra.
99.
Yeah. And then Cron at Western Forest, probably an outlier. So you're probably looking at the three that they're thinking of. And in a perfect world, if I was doing it, I would let them shoot it out for the coach post World Cup. But I would hire Cheika and just tell him, you're just doing it for 2 seasons. And then we're going to see who emerges from those 3. But let's see how they do in the Super Rugby for a while. Because then we're planning for an American World Cup. It's not here. How embarrassing is it to bomb out of your own World Cup? It's terrible. In a country where you're dying for market share, that's the worst thing. You're giving league, your hated enemy, they're going to laugh at you the whole time. Yeah, look at them. They bombed out because they had someone who was doing test coach for the first time. And, his experience was Super Rugby where everyone scores 45 points to 43. It's not good test preparation.
So with the other options, apart from these Super Rugby coaches, what about Jamie Joseph, or what about Dave Rennie maybe coming back? You said they don't want retreads.
So then you get back into we don't want to get another Kiwi. So it's so funny. Like Joe Schmidt's been tremendously successful. I mean, let's say he won 6 and lost 7. Not crazy successful, but he did turn it around and beat England and Twickenham. So you would think that wouldn't be an argument. But Australians are notoriously parochial as well. It doesn't really matter where you're from. You can coach Australia. So Ronan O'Gara has been thought about. His star has somewhat dimmed because of how La Rochelle hasn't won at home anymore. If you were asking me if it wasn't Cheika, I would probably say Jamie Joseph. Jamie Joseph gets more out of the Highlanders than almost any other coach could. He's just a soldier and very well liked. He's sort of like a more charismatic Dave Rennie. Dave Rennie was a bit too dull for Australia because they do have to drum up some business and, be funny. Yeah, that could be good.
Thanks, Harry. That's our comings part of this episode 56, part 1. Next coming up is the goings part 2, and we're going to be dealing with Stephen Kitsoff, amongst others, and he's going to talk about that a bit. Thanks, Harry. We'll be back in a minute.
It's the Lekker Rugby Pod, only on Megaphone Rugby.